The stars burned cold in the void as Princess Yuna stood on the bridge of her warship, the Crimson Dawn. Her purple skin gleamed under the red lights of the command center. Her eyes, sharp as daggers, watched the enemy fleet scatter before her forces. The rebels had thought they could hide in the asteroid field. They were wrong. They were always wrong. "Fire all weapons," Yuna commanded. Her voice was ice. The ship's cannons roared. Energy beams cut through space, slicing rebel ships in half. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers. Within minutes, the battle was over. Another victory. Another perfect execution of strategy. Yuna had never lost a battle. Not once in her 15 years of military command. Her second officer, Commander Hannah, approached from behind. Hannah had served with Yuna since they were children in the military academy. She was one of the few people who could speak freely to the princess. "The rebels are destroyed, Your Highness," Hannah reported. "Minimal damage to our fleet." "As expected," Yuna said. She turned from the viewport, her long silver hair flowing behind her. "Inform the Galactic Council that the Outer Rim is secure. The Volteran Empire has once again proven our superiority." Hannah hesitated. "There is news from the Council, Your Highness. The humans have been granted provisional membership." Yuna's eyes narrowed. The humans? Those primitive creatures who barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The Council grows weak. What possible value could humans bring to galactic civilization? The treaty requires all major powers to accept human observers on their flagships," Hannah continued carefully. "We are to receive one tomorrow." Yuna's jaw tightened. The idea of a human on her ship, watching her operations, was insulting. Humans were nothing. Their tiny planet had contributed nothing to the galaxy. They had no great military victories, no technological marvels. They were barely worth noticing. "Very well," Yuna said coldly. "Let them send their observer. I will show them exactly what real power looks like. Perhaps then they will understand their place in the universe." The next day, Captain June stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the Crimson Dawn. He was tall for a human, with black hair and calm brown eyes. He wore the simple gray uniform of the Earth Defense Force. He carried only a small bag and a data pad. Yuna waited for him in the docking bay, surrounded by her honor guard. She wanted him to feel small, insignificant. The Volteran soldiers stood at attention, each one towering over the human visitor. "Captain June," Yuna said, looking down at him. Volterans were naturally taller than humans, and she used every centimeter of her height to intimidate. "I am Princess Yuna, commander of this vessel and the Third Fleet of the Volteran Empire. You are here because politics demand it, not because I require or desire your presence." June bowed slightly. "I understand, Your Highness. I'm here to learn and observe. I won't interfere with your operations." "See that you don't," Yuna replied. "Commander Hannah will show you to your quarters. You will stay there unless summoned. You will not speak to my crew. You will not touch any equipment. You will not offer opinions or suggestions. Am I clear?" "Perfectly clear," June said. His voice was respectful but not afraid. That irritated Yuna somehow. She wanted to see fear. Instead, she saw only calm acceptance. Over the following days, Yuna made sure June's assignment was as difficult as possible. She woke him at odd hours for briefings. She assigned him standing positions during long tactical meetings. She spoke only in Volteran during strategy sessions, forcing him to rely on his translator device. She wanted him to quit, to request a transfer, to prove that humans couldn't match Volteran standards. But June never complained. He stood quietly during meetings, taking notes on his datapad. He asked no questions. He made no requests. He simply watched and learned. This infuriated Yuna more than any protest would have. One evening, Una found him in the observation lounge, staring at the stars. She had come there to think in private, and his presence annoyed her. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. June turned. "Watching the nebula. It's beautiful. We don't have anything like this near Earth." Una glanced at the swirling purple and blue clouds of gas outside the window. She had seen thousands of nebulas. They were just stellar phenomena, nothing special. "You should be in your quarters," she said. "My shift ended 2 hours ago. I checked the regulations. Observers are allowed in common areas during off-duty hours." June's voice remained polite but firm. Una stepped closer. "Tell me, Captain, what does Earth hope to gain by sending people like you into space? Your world is small. Your technology is borrowed from other species. Your military is untested against real threats. Why do you think you belong among us?" June considered the question carefully. "We don't claim to be superior, Your Highness. We know we're newcomers, but humans have survived a lot. We've fought wars on our own planet for thousands of years. We've nearly destroyed ourselves several times. We've learned that strength alone isn't enough. You need adaptability, creativity, the ability to change." "Weakness," Una said dismissively. "You make excuses for your failures." "Maybe," June agreed. "Or maybe surviving your own stupidity takes a different kind of strength." Before Una could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Commander Hannah's voice came through the communication system. "Your Highness, we're receiving a distress call from the Kashin mining colony. They're under attack by pirate forces. We're the closest ship. The estimated arrival time is 4 hours." Una activated her wrist communicator. "Battle stations. All crew report immediately. Set course for Kashin at maximum speed." She looked at June. "Come with me, Captain. You wanted to observe. Now you'll see how the Velteron Empire deals with criminals." They rushed to the bridge together. Una took her command chair, while June stood at an observation station in the back. The ship's engines roared to life, pushing them through space at incredible speeds. Hannah brought up tactical displays. The pirates have 6 heavy cruisers and multiple fighter squadrons. The mining colony has minimal defenses. Current casualties are estimated at 300 and rising. "Standard encirclement pattern," Una ordered. "We'll trap them against the asteroid field and destroy them systematically. They'll have no escape route." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Una had used this tactic dozens of times. It was reliable, proven, perfect. June watched quietly from his station, his face unreadable. Una ignored him, focusing on the coming battle. She would show this human what real military excellence looked like. She would demonstrate why the Velteron Empire ruled its territories without challenge. The Crimson Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kashin system. Immediately, sensors detected the pirate fleet. They were exactly where intelligence had predicted. "All ships, assume formation," Una commanded. Her fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, spreading out to surround the enemy. But something was wrong. The pirates weren't running. They were holding position near the asteroids, as if waiting for something. "Your Highness," Hannah said, concern creeping into her voice. "They're not reacting to our presence." Una leaned forward. "They know they're trapped. They're probably trying to negotiate surrender." Then the asteroids exploded. Not all of them, but dozens scattered throughout the field. They'd been rigged with mines. The explosions sent massive rocks flying in all directions, directly into the path of Una's carefully positioned ships. "Evasive maneuvers," Una shouted, but it was too late. 3 of her ships took critical damage. The perfect encirclement formation shattered into chaos. The pirates struck. They had studied her tactics. They had prepared for her predictable strategy. They knew exactly how she would attack, and they had turned her own methods against her. For the first time in her military career, Princess Yuna watched her fleet take heavy losses, and she had no idea how to stop it. The Crimson Dawn shook as another explosion rocked the hull. Red emergency lights flashed across the bridge. Yuna gripped her command chair, watching her perfect formation fall apart on the tactical display. 2 more ships reported critical damage. The pirates were outmaneuvering her fleet, using the asteroid field like a weapon. "Return fire! All batteries concentrate on the lead pirate vessel," Yuna commanded. Her voice remained steady, but inside, fury burned. This wasn't supposed to happen. She never lost. Never. Commander Hannah worked frantically at her station. "Your Highness, they know our attack patterns. Every time we move to engage, they retreat deeper into the asteroid field. Our larger ships can't follow safely. Then send in fighters," Yuna snapped. "We tried. The debris from the explosions is too dense. We've already lost 4 squadrons." The pirate ships darted between asteroids like insects, striking quickly and disappearing. They had prepared for this battle. They had studied Yuna's previous victories and found the weakness in her tactics. She had always relied on overwhelming force and perfect formations. But in this chaotic environment, those advantages meant nothing. Another ship on her tactical display turned red, indicating severe damage. Yuna's jaw clenched. She was losing this battle, and she didn't know how to win it. "Your Highness." The voice came from behind her. Yuna spun in her chair. Captain June stood at his observation station, one hand raised respectfully. She had forgotten he was even there. "What?" she demanded. "Permission to speak, Your Highness." "I may have an idea. You?" Yuna's eyes blazed. "A human thinks he can solve a problem that I cannot?" June remained calm. "With respect, Your Highness, sometimes an outside perspective helps. The pirates know your strategies because they've studied Velteran military doctrine. They don't know human tactics." Yuna wanted to refuse. Her pride screamed at her to solve this herself. But another explosion rattled the ship. More of her crew were dying. She looked at Hana, who gave her a subtle nod. "Speak," Yuna said coldly, "but make it quick." June stepped forward to the tactical display. "They're using the asteroids as cover and the debris field as a barrier. Your ships are too big and too organized. They expect you to try to push through or surround them. But what if you did the opposite?" "The opposite?" Yuna frowned. "Retreat," June said simply. "Make them think they're winning. Draw them out of the asteroid field into open space where they're vulnerable." "Retreat?" Yuna stood from her chair, her voice dangerous. "The Velteran Empire does not retreat. We do not show weakness to criminals and pirates." "It's not weakness if it's a trap," June replied. He manipulated the tactical display, showing a new formation. "Pull back your damaged ships first. Make it look panicked. The pirates will chase because they think they can finish you off. But you position your undamaged ships here, here, and here." He pointed to positions behind a large asteroid cluster. "When the pirates follow your retreating ships, you hit them from the sides. They'll be caught in a crossfire with nowhere to run." Hana studied the plan. It could work. The asteroid cluster would hide our ships from their sensors until they're committed to the chase. Yuna stared at the display. Everything in her training told her this was wrong. Velterans advanced. They conquered. They dominated. Retreat was for the weak and defeated. But the current strategy wasn't working, and her people were dying. She made her decision. "All ships, begin tactical withdrawal," Yuna ordered. The words tasted bitter. "Make it look damaged and disorganized. I want the enemy to believe we're running." Her crew hesitated for only a moment before obeying. The Velteran ships turned away from the asteroid field, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. To any observer, It looked like a broken fleet fleeing in panic. On the pirate communication channels, which the Crimson Dawn had been monitoring, laughter could be heard. The pirate commander ordered his ships to pursue and destroy the retreating Volturans. "They're taking the bait," Hana reported. "All pirate vessels are leaving the asteroid field." Yuna watched the tactical display like a predator watching prey. The pirate ships chased their damaged vessels across open space, firing constantly. They were so focused on the apparent victory that they didn't notice 3 Velteran heavy cruisers sliding into position behind the asteroid cluster. "Now," Yuna commanded. The hidden Velteran ships emerged from cover, weapons charged and ready. They opened fire on the pirate fleet from both sides simultaneously. The pirates, caught completely by surprise in open space, had nowhere to hide. Within minutes, their ships were disabled or destroyed. The few that tried to flee were picked off easily. Silence fell over the bridge as the last pirate ship exploded. The battle was over. Victory belonged to the Velteran Empire. But it wasn't Yuna's victory. It was a human's. Commander Hana smiled. "Brilliant tactic, Captain June. Unconventional, but effective." The bridge crew murmured in agreement. Some even looked at June with respect. Yuna felt something cold settle in her chest. She should be relieved. Her fleet was saved. The mission was successful. But instead, she felt humiliated. She had needed a human to win her battle. "Captain June," Yuna said quietly, "come with me." "Commander Hana, you have the bridge." She walked off the bridge without waiting for a response. June followed her through the corridors to her private office. Once inside, Yuna sealed the door and turned to face him. "Where did you learn that tactic?" she demanded. June stood at attention. "Earth's history, Your Highness. We call it a feigned retreat. It's been used in human warfare for thousands of years. The Mongols used it. The Romans fell for it. Countless battles were won by pretending to lose." "Deception," Yuna said. "You won through lies and trickery." "I won through adaptation," June corrected gently. "The pirates knew your playbook, so I used one they hadn't seen. That's how humans survived on Earth for so long. We weren't always the strongest or the fastest. But we learned to adapt, to change our strategies, to use our enemies' expectations against them." Yuna paced her office like a caged predator. The Volteran Empire was built on strength, on discipline, on superior tactics perfected over centuries. We don't need to adapt because our methods work. They work today because you were willing to try something new, June pointed out. You could have refused my suggestion. Your pride could have cost you the battle and your ships. But you chose effectiveness over ego. That takes strength too. Yuna stopped pacing and looked at him sharply. "You think I should thank you? I think you should consider that maybe strength comes in different forms," June said. "The pirates studied your tactics because they were predictable. Predictability is a weakness, no matter how perfect your execution." "Get out," Yuna said, her voice tight. June bowed and left the office. When the door closed, Yuna sat heavily in her chair. She pulled up the tactical recording of the battle and watched it again. The retreat, the trap, the victory. It had worked perfectly, and she hated that it came from a human. Later that night, Yuna couldn't sleep. She wandered the ship's corridors until she found herself in the observation lounge again. She wasn't surprised to find June there, looking at the stars. "Can't you sleep either?" June asked without turning around. Yuna didn't answer immediately. She stood beside him, looking out at the vast darkness of space. Finally, she spoke. "Why do humans fight so hard? Your plan is small, unremarkable. You have no great resources that other species want. You could have stayed on Earth, content with your little world. Why reach for the stars when you know you're outmatched?" June thought about the question. Because we're curious. Because we dream. Because humans have always looked up at the night sky and wondered what's out there. He paused. And maybe because being small and unremarkable taught us that we have to work harder, think smarter, and never give up. We can't rely on being naturally superior. We have to earn our place. You think Velterons don't work hard? Yuna challenged. I think you work hard at being what you've always been, June said. But humans work hard at becoming what we're not. There's a difference. Yuna considered his words in silence. Outside the window, a distant star exploded in a supernova, its light reaching them across millions of years. The universe was vast and ancient and full of wonders. And for the first time, Princess Yuna wondered if perhaps the Velteron way wasn't the only way. Your tactics saved my fleet today, she admitted quietly. I won't forget that. June smiled slightly. I was just doing my job, Your Highness. Call me Yuna, she said suddenly, surprising herself. When we're alone, no titles. Just names. June looked at her with those calm brown eyes. All right, Yuna. She nodded and left the observation lounge, her mind churning with unfamiliar thoughts. Something had changed today. Not just in the battle. Something inside her. A crack in the armor she had worn her entire life. And she wasn't sure if that terrified her or excited her. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other in the great circular chamber. Yuna stood in the Velteran delegation area, her face a mask of controlled fury. Beside her, Captain June watched quietly, taking in the scene. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed devastating images. 3 colony worlds burning, cities reduced to ash, millions of refugees fleeing into space. The Krath Dominion had launched a massive surprise attack on the neutral border territories, targeting both human and Velteran settlements. This is an act of war, the Velteran ambassador declared. The Krath must be punished with overwhelming force. We agree, said the human ambassador, a gray-haired woman named Nari. But we must coordinate our response. Divided, we'll fail. Together, we can push them back. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Velterans and humans had never worked together on a military operation. The 2 species barely tolerated each other. The idea of joint command was almost unthinkable. The council chairman, an ancient being whose species had mediated galactic conflicts for millennia, raised one crystalline appendage for silence. The Krath have calculated that our divisions make us weak. They are correct. I propose a joint human-Velteran defense force. Princess Yuna will command the Velteran contingent. Captain June will command the human forces. They will operate as co-commanders. Yuna's eyes widened. That is unacceptable. The Velteran fleet cannot operate under split command. Our military doctrine requires. Your military doctrine didn't stop 3 colonies from burning. Ambassador Nari interrupted sharply. Neither did ours. Maybe it's time we tried something different. Yuna wanted to argue, but the images of burning cities silenced her. Velteran civilians were dying. That mattered more than pride. She looked at June, who met her gaze steadily. Can you work with me? June asked quietly. Yuna took a breath. Can you work with me? I already have, June replied. The mission began badly. When Yuna and June arrived at the staging area, they found Velteran and human crews barely speaking to each other. The Velteran officers refused to share tactical data with human commanders. Human crews complained that Velteran orders were too rigid and didn't account for their ship's limitations. In the command center, Yuna spread out the tactical maps. The Krath Fleet Admiral Tay is leading the assault. He's known for scorched earth tactics. He won't stop until everything in his path is destroyed. We need to hit him hard and fast. We need to evacuate the civilians first, June countered. There are still millions of people trapped on the border colonies. If we engage Tay's fleet without securing the evacuation routes, they'll be caught in the crossfire. Evacuation takes time we don't have, Yuna argued. Every hour we delay, the Krath grows stronger. We must strike now with overwhelming force and sacrifice the people we're supposed to protect? June's voice remained calm but firm. That's not a victory. That's just choosing which side does the killing. They argued for hours. Yuna wanted a direct military confrontation. June insisted on prioritizing civilian safety. Neither would back down. Finally, Commander Hana suggested a compromise. They would split the fleet. Yuna would lead the combat forces against the Krath. June would coordinate the evacuation operations. It was a terrible plan. It divided their forces. But it was the only way they could both agree to move forward. The operation began at dawn. Yuna's combat fleet engaged the Krath forces near the border world of Talmor. June's evacuation ships moved into position around the colony of Sarah Prime. Everything went according to plan for exactly 17 minutes. Then the Krath sprung their trap. A second fleet, hidden in a nearby nebula, appeared and attacked June's evacuation convoy. The transport ships, loaded with refugees and barely armed, were defenseless. Yuna! June's voice crackled over the communication channel. We're under attack. We have 3 colony ships full of civilians and no military escort. I need backup now. Yuna watched her tactical display. If she diverted forces to help June, the Krath fleet at Talmor would break through her lines. If she stayed committed to the battle, June's ships would be destroyed and thousands of civilians would die. Standard military doctrine was clear. You don't abandon a winning position. You complete the mission. Civilians were unfortunate casualties, but the strategic objective mattered more. But Yuna found herself thinking about June's words from weeks ago, about how humans valued different kinds of strength, about adaptation and change. Commander Hana, Yuna said, I'm taking 3 strike wings to support the evacuation. You have command here. Hold the line until I return. Hana's eyes widened. Your Highness, if you leave, we might lose Talmor. If I stay, we definitely lose those civilians, Yuna replied. Hold the line, Commander. That's an order. Yuna launched from the Crimson Dawn in her personal strike craft, leading 3 full wings of fighters towards Sarah Prime. The Volteron pilots followed without question, though she could hear their confusion over the communication channels. Abandoning a strategic position to save refugees went against everything they had been taught. At Sarah Prime, June was fighting a losing battle. His few escort ships were being torn apart by the Krath attack fleet. The colony transports were slow and vulnerable. One had already taken critical damage. June, get those transports to the jump point, Yuna ordered as her wings arrived. We'll buy you time. Yuna? June's surprise was clear even through the static. You came. We're supposed to be working together, remember? Yuna said. Then she opened fire on the nearest Krath cruiser. The battle was vicious. Yuna's fighters were outnumbered, but they were also the best pilots in the Volteran fleet. They darted between Krath ships, targeting weapon systems and engines. Yuna herself flew like she was possessed, her strike craft dancing through enemy fire. But it wasn't enough. A Krath destroyer got through their defensive line and targeted the largest colony transport. Yuna saw the energy build up for the main cannon. In seconds, 3,000 civilians would be vaporized. No. Yuna pushed her engines to maximum, putting her small strike craft between the destroyer and the transport. She fired everything she had at the destroyer's weapon systems. The Krath captain fired anyway. The massive energy beam meant to destroy a transport ship hit Yuna's tiny strike craft instead. Her shields collapsed instantly. Systems exploded around her. The cabin filled with smoke and the terrible sound of tearing metal. Her craft spun out of control, tumbling through space. Through the cracked canopy, Yuna could see stars spinning. She could taste blood in her mouth. Her vision was fading. She had failed. She was going to die in the cold darkness of space. Then another ship appeared next to her damaged craft. Through the smoke and broken screens, Yuna saw June's face on her communication panel. "Hold on," June said. "I'm getting you out of there." "The evacuation," Yuna tried to say, coughing. "The civilians are jumping to safety right now," June interrupted. "Thanks to you buying us time. Now stop being stubborn and let me rescue you." June's ship latched onto her damaged craft with a magnetic grapple. He pulled her through space, dodging enemy fire until they reached the last evacuation transport. By then, Yuna had lost consciousness. She woke up in the transport's medical bay. Her body ached everywhere. Bandages covered her arms and head. But she was alive. Through the viewport, she could see they were in hyperspace, safe from the craft. June sat in a chair beside her bed, his head resting on his arms, asleep from exhaustion. When Yuna shifted, trying to sit up, he woke immediately. "Don't move too much," June said. "You took a lot of damage. The doctors say you'll be fine, but you need rest." "The evacuation?" Yuna asked. "Successful. We got all 3 colony ships out. That's 9,000 civilians who would be dead if you hadn't shown up." June smiled slightly. "You disobeyed standard military doctrine. I'm impressed. I learned it from a human," Yuna said quietly. "He taught me that sometimes the right choice isn't the tactical one." They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, June spoke. "You put your ship between that destroyer and the transport. You were willing to die to save people you'd never met. Why?" Yuna thought about her answer carefully. "Because you were right. Winning a battle but losing the people you're supposed to protect isn't victory. It's just organized murder. I've spent my entire life following Volteran doctrine. Perfect tactics. Flawless execution. But I never asked if I was fighting for the right reasons." "And now?" June asked. "Now I think maybe there's more to leadership than winning battles," Yuna admitted. "Maybe humans understand something my people forgot. That individual lives matter. That mercy is not weakness. That sometimes the strongest choice is the one that puts others before yourself." June reached out and took her hand. Yuna looked down at their joined hands, purple skin and brown skin together, and felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't just respect anymore. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper and more frightening. "When we get back," June said softly, "we're going to face a lot of questions about why we split the fleet. Why we abandoned strategic positions to save civilians. The Galactic Council isn't going to like it." "Let them complain," Yuna replied, squeezing his hand. "We saved lives. That's what matters." Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as the transport carried them to safety. Behind them, the battle still raged. The summons came 3 days after the evacuation. Yuna stood in her quarters aboard the Crimson Dawn, holding the official communication tablet. The seal of the Emperor himself glowed on the screen. Her father wanted to see her. Immediately, on Velther Prime, Commander Hannah stood beside her, worry clear on her face. "He knows about the operation. About you working with the humans. About abandoning the strategic position at Talmor. I saved 9,000 lives," Yuna said, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "Your father won't see it that way," Hannah replied gently. "You know how he thinks. Victory above all. Strength above mercy. The old ways." Yuna knew. Emperor Dassen had ruled the Velteran Empire for 40 years with an iron will. He had transformed their civilization into a galactic power through military might and unwavering discipline. He did not tolerate weakness, and cooperation with humans would look very much like weakness to him. "The treaty requires Captain June to accompany me," Una said, reading the summons again, "as my assigned human observer." "That might make things worse," Hana warned. "Bringing a human to the Imperial Palace. Your father will see it as an insult." "Then he can be insulted," Una replied, surprising herself with her own boldness. "June is part of this whether my father likes it or not." The journey to Velther Prime took 2 days. Una spent most of the time in her quarters, preparing for the confrontation she knew was coming. June tried to talk to her several times, but she avoided him. She didn't want him to see her fear. When they entered Velther's star system, June stood beside her on the bridge. Through the viewport, Velther Prime appeared, a magnificent world of purple oceans and silver continents. 3 moons orbited the planet, each one home to massive military installations. "It's beautiful," June said quietly. Una looked at her homeworld and felt a complicated mix of emotions: pride, belonging, and now, for the first time, doubt. "My people built this civilization from nothing," Una said. 3,000 years ago, we were conquered by the Korthan Empire. They enslaved us, worked us nearly to extinction, but we learned from them. We became stronger. When we finally overthrew them, we swore we would never be weak again, never be victims. We would be the ones with power. And you became the thing that hurt you," June observed. Una looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "You were enslaved, so you became enslavers. You were conquered, so you became conquerors. You learned strength from your oppressors, but you also learned cruelty." June met her gaze. "Humans did the same thing throughout our history. We hurt each other in the same ways we had been hurt. It took us a long time to learn that breaking the cycle requires choosing to be different." Before Una could respond, the communication officer announced their approach to the Imperial Palace. The conversation would have to wait. The palace was a massive structure of crystal and metal, rising from the heart of the capital city. Una and June were escorted through halls filled with treasures from 1,000 conquered worlds. Servants bowed as Una passed. Guards saluted. Everything was exactly as she remembered. But now, seeing it through June's eyes, Una noticed things she had never questioned before. The murals celebrating military victories, the statues of conquering emperors, the complete absence of any art celebrating peace or compassion. The palace was a monument to power and nothing else. They were brought to the throne room. Emperor Desang sat on a throne made from the hull of the first Korthan ship the Volterans had destroyed. He was massive, even for a Volteran, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. Beside him stood Una's younger brother, Prince Minho, watching with barely concealed satisfaction. "Daughter," the emperor said. His voice echoed through the chamber. "You stand before me accused of betraying Volteran military doctrine, of abandoning a strategic position, of choosing human lives over Volteran victory. How do you answer these charges?" Una stepped forward, her back straight. June remained 2 steps behind her, as protocol demanded. "Father, I made a tactical decision in the field. I saved 9,000 civilian lives." "You disobeyed standard military procedure," Minho interjected. "You put sentiment above strategy. You showed weakness." "I showed judgment," Una countered. "The situation required adaptation." "Adaptation?" The emperor stood from his throne. "Is that what the humans call it?" "We have a word for it, too. Corruption. You have been infected by human sentiment, by their weak philosophy. This is what comes from allowing them on our ships." "The human tactical suggestions saved my fleet at Kashan," Una argued. "Without Captain June's strategy, I would have lost 3 cruisers and 500 crew members, because you had become predictable. Minho said triumphantly. Your tactics were studied and countered. A true Velteron commander would have adapted our superior methods, not borrowed from inferior species. Yuna felt anger rising. Captain June is not inferior. He's enough. The Emperor's shout silenced the room. You will renounce this alliance with the humans. You will return to traditional Velteran command. You will prove your loyalty to the Empire. Or you will be stripped of rank and exiled. The words hit Yuna like a physical blow. Exile, to be cast out from Velteran society, to lose everything she had built. Her position, her honor, her place in the military, everything that defined who she was. She looked at her father, at Minho, who was smiling now, at the throne made from the bones of their former oppressors. This was the world she had been raised in, the world that had shaped her into a perfect warrior, the world that demanded absolute obedience. Then she looked at June. He stood quietly, hands clasped behind his back, face calm. He had endured her contempt, her tests, her attempts to make him quit. And he had responded with patience, wisdom, and genuine care. He had shown her a different way to be strong. I need time to consider, Yuna said finally. You have until tomorrow, the Emperor replied. Choose wisely, daughter. Choose Velther. That night, Yuna couldn't sleep. She wandered the palace corridors, eventually finding herself in the Imperial Archives. This was where the history of her people was preserved. She had spent countless hours here as a child, reading about military victories and great conquests. She was surprised to find June already there, examining a holographic display of ancient Velteron history. You should be in your quarters, Yuna said. It's not safe for humans to wander the palace alone. Commander Hannah gave me clearance, June replied. I wanted to understand your people better. I've been reading about the Korthan occupation, what they did to Velther. It was terrible. Yuna joined him at the display. Images show Velteron cities burning, her ancestors in chains, the systematic destruction of their culture and identity. This is why we became strong, Yuna said. So it could never happen again. I understand, June said. Humans have similar histories. We were conquered, enslaved, oppressed by each other and by ourselves. We know what it's like to be powerless. Then, you understand why my father is right, Yuna said bitterly. Why I should choose Velther. Choose strength. Choose tradition. I understand why you're afraid, June said gently. But your father isn't right. He's just following the same pattern that's been repeating for 3,000 years. Hurt people hurt others. Conquered people become conquerors. The cycle never ends unless someone chooses to break it. And if I break it, I lose everything, Yuna whispered. My rank, my place in society, my family, my identity. June turned to face her fully. Or you gain something more important. The chance to be who you choose to be, not who you were raised to be. The freedom to make your own path. You make it sound simple, Yuna said. But you're asking me to betray everything I know. Everything I am. I'm not asking you to do anything, June replied. This is your choice, Yuna, not your father's. Not the Empire's. Yours. What do you want? Yuna looked at the historical displays. Centuries of conquest. Victory after victory. Power built on power. It was glorious, impressive, undeniably strong. But it was also empty. There was no art in these archives celebrating peace. No monuments to compassion. No records of times when Velteran leaders chose mercy over might. Just an endless parade of battles won and enemies crushed. I want to believe there's a better way, Yuna said quietly. But I'm afraid of becoming someone my own people won't recognize. Maybe that's not a bad thing, June suggested. Being recognized for who you were isn't the same as being respected for who you become. Before Yuna could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. Commander Hana's voice came through Yuna's communication device. Your Highness, there's been an incident. Someone tried to assassinate Captain June in his quarters. He wasn't there because he was in the archives with you, but the assassins are still in the palace. You need to get to safety now. Yuna's blood ran cold. She grabbed June's arm. Come with me, now. They ran through the corridors. Palace guards were mobilizing, but Yuna didn't trust any of them. Someone in the palace wanted June dead. Someone wanted to force a diplomatic incident between humans and Volturans. She had a terrible suspicion about who that someone was. They reached her private ship in the palace hangar. Commander Hana was already there, along with a handful of loyal crew members. Your Highness, I don't think this was... Yuna burst into the throne room, her weapon drawn. Emperor Daesung stood from his throne, surprise crossing his face. Prince Minho stood beside him, and his expression told Yuna everything she needed to know. Guilt and calculation warred in his eyes. You tried to have June killed, Yuna accused, her voice ringing through the chamber. You wanted to create an incident. Force a war between humans and Volturans. Why? Minho's face hardened. Because you've become weak, sister. Corrupted by human sentiment. Someone has to protect the Empire from this disease of cooperation and mercy. Minho, what have you done? The Emperor's voice was quiet, dangerous. What you taught me to do, Father, Minho replied. Put the Empire first. Eliminate threats. Maintain Volturan supremacy. He gestured at Yuna. She's not the daughter you raised anymore. She puts human lives above Volturan victory. She questions our traditions. She's becoming one of them. You know nothing about strength, Yuna said coldly. You hide behind assassins and schemes. You risk war because you're afraid of change. I'm afraid of weakness, Minho shouted. The Galactic Council is pushing integration. Human culture spreading through our territories. Our people starting to question the old ways. If we don't stop it now, in a generation, there won't be a Volturan empire. Just a galaxy of weak species pretending to be equal. We are equal, Yuna said. That's what you can't accept. Humans aren't inferior. They're just different. And their differences make them strong in ways we never considered. Before Minho could respond, Commander Hana rushed into the throne room, a datapad in her hands. She had come with Yuna, but stayed back initially. Now she looked pale and shaken. Your Highness Emperor, I've discovered something. Prince Minho has been communicating with Krath Fleet Admiral Tay. The border attacks, the ambushes, everything was coordinated. They wanted to provoke conflict, prevent human-Volturan cooperation, keep the galaxy divided. The Emperor's face went white with rage. You conspired with the Krath? With our enemies? They're not our enemies, Minho said desperately. They're traditionalists like us. They understand that the old order must be preserved. The humans are the real threat. Their philosophy of equality and cooperation will destroy everything we've built. You betrayed the Empire, Yuna said quietly. You caused the deaths of thousands of Volturan civilians just to prove a point about human weakness. And you call me corrupted? Minho drew his weapon. I did what was necessary, and I'll keep doing it. Starting with the human who poisoned your mind. He turned toward the door where June was supposed to have been evacuated. But June stood in the doorway, flanked by palace guards loyal to Yuna. He had refused to leave, just as Yuna had suspected he would. Let him go, Minho, Yuna said, her own weapon raised. This ends now. Yes, Minho agreed. It does. The fight was brief but brutal. Minho was skilled, trained by the same masters as Yuna. But Yuna fought with something her brother lacked: purpose, clarity, the knowledge that she was fighting not for tradition or empire, but for the future she chose to build. She disarmed him within minutes, her weapon at his throat. Minho stared up at her, hatred burning in his eyes. "Kill me," he spat. "Prove you're still Velteron. Prove you can do what's necessary." Yuna looked down at her brother. The old Yuna, the perfect warrior princess, would have executed him without hesitation. Traitors deserved death. That was the Velteron way. That was what she had been taught. But she had learned something new, something human. "No," Yuna said, lowering her weapon. "You'll stand trial, face justice, maybe even learn that mercy is stronger than murder. Though I doubt it." She signaled to the guards. "Take him to confinement. He's no longer a prince of this empire." As Minho was dragged away, still shouting about weakness and corruption, Yuna turned to face her father. The emperor sat heavily on his throne, looking older than she had ever seen him. "I failed," Emperor Desung said quietly. "I taught him strength but not wisdom, power but not purpose. I created a monster in my own image." "You created both of us," Yuna replied. "I chose to become something different." The emperor looked at her for a long moment. "You were my greatest achievement, the perfect Velteron warrior. And now you want to throw that away for human philosophy?" "I want to keep what's valuable and change what's broken," Yuna said. "The Velteran Empire is strong, father. But strength without growth is stagnation. And stagnation is just another kind of death." "And you learned this from him?" The emperor gestured at June. "From a human who has been among us for mere weeks?" "I learned it from watching him face contempt with patience," Yuna said. "Insults with wisdom. Challenges with creativity. He showed me that there are many kinds of strength. And the strongest civilizations are those willing to learn from others." The emperor stood. For a moment, Yuna thought he might exile her after all. Instead, he walked down from the throne and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I am too old to change," he said. "Too set in my ways. The Empire needs a leadership that can adapt to this new galaxy. Leadership that understands cooperation without losing our identity." He paused. "I am abdicating, effective immediately. You will become Empress of Velther." Yuna's eyes widened. "Father, I can't." "You can," he interrupted. "And you will. But not in the way I would have ruled. You'll do it your way. The way you've learned. And perhaps that's what the Empire needs now." 3 days later, Yuna stood in the Galactic Council chambers once again. But this time, she wore the formal robes of an empress, not a military commander. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Nari stood at the human delegation. "We have evidence of the conspiracy between Prince Minho and Fleet Admiral Tay. Both have been arrested. But this conspiracy reveals a larger problem. Our civilizations are divided by mistrust and prejudice. That division makes us weak." Yuna stepped forward. "I propose the formation of an integrated galactic defense force, not Velteron, not human, but combined, multiple species working together, learning from each other, protecting all citizens regardless of their origin." Murmurs spread through the chamber, some excited, some skeptical, some openly hostile. "And who would command this force?" asked a representative from a species that had long been neutral. "Co-commanders from different species," Yuna replied, "bringing their unique perspectives and strengths together. I nominate Captain June of Earth to serve as one of the first co-commanders." June stepped forward, bowing slightly. "I accept, if the council approves." "You would give up the throne?" asked the Velteron ambassador, shocked. "You would leave the Empire to command a mixed fleet?" I would serve the Empire best by building bridges between species, Yuna said. My people need to learn that cooperation isn't weakness, that adaptation isn't betrayal, that we can honor our traditions while embracing change. She looked at June. A wise human once told me that the strongest choice is putting others before yourself. I choose to serve the galaxy, not just rule my empire. The vote took hours, but eventually, the Council approved the formation of the Integrated Galactic Defense Force. Yuna and June were confirmed as co-commanders. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. Months later, Yuna stood on the observation deck of their new ship, the Unity. It was designed by both human and Velteron engineers, combining the best of both species' technologies. Around her, crew members from a dozen different species worked together, learning each other's languages and customs. June joined her at the viewport. Having second thoughts? Every day, Yuna admitted, I'm Empress of the Velteron Empire, and I spend my time on a ship trying to convince species who hate each other to work together. My father would be horrified, but are you happy? June asked. Yuna thought about the question. Happy wasn't the word she had associated with herself before. Successful, yes. Victorious, certainly. But happy? She looked at the crew working together. Velterons teaching humans advanced tactics. Humans showing Velterons creative problem-solving. Species that had been enemies for generations learning to trust each other. I'm proud, Yuna said. I'm challenged. I'm growing. Maybe that's better than happy. I think you're doing something incredible, June said. You're not just commanding a fleet. You're changing how species see each other, how they see themselves. Yuna glanced at him. Over the months, they had become true partners, not just in command, but in vision, in purpose, in understanding. She had learned to trust him completely, and he had never betrayed that trust. I was so certain humans were inferior, Yuna said quietly, so convinced that Velteron ways were superior. I was the undefeated warrior princess, perfect and untouchable. And now? June asked with a slight smile. Now I know that being undefeated doesn't mean being right, Yuna replied, and that the greatest victory isn't conquering others. It's conquering your own certainty, your own prejudice, your own fear of change. On her arm, the bioluminescent patterns that all Velterons possessed glowed softly. Dr. Sora, the human xenobiologist, had identified the pattern. It indicated deep emotional bonding, a connection that Velterons rarely displayed publicly. Yuna no longer tried to hide it. Do you ever regret it? June asked. Giving up everything you knew? Everything you were? Yuna looked out at the stars, at the vast universe full of different species, different ideas, different possibilities.